Hi, I'm Jim,
And I'm Kevin,
and we are.
the Signal Brothers. Hey, welcome back to another live podcast for Jim and I on the Signal Brothers. We're glad to have you here joining us. And if you're joining us for the first time, that's okay. Uh, hey, listen, we love doing this. We love doing the live podcast, and it's really to do it live. You're getting us raw. You're getting us our thoughts and our ideas as they come up. So we want you to go ahead if you have questions, comments on anything that we're talking about today. We love to take your questions. Go ahead and put them in the chat, and long as they're appropriate, related to the subject matter, we'll be happy to answer them here live. And if you're passionate about something, and in the last couple of weeks, I've had a few friends that have been pretty passionate about this specific subject. Hey, we'd love to get you on here live. We'd love to have a debate with you here, a professional one, and
Right.
hear your ideas, your concepts. Right? It's a two-way street, right? And if there's something that you'd like us to cover, right, but you don't want to be on here, shoot Jim or I a message. We'll be happy to consider taking that subject and covering it. But today we're going to cover
A lot.
a lot. And we're probably going to go potentially more than an hour today. So some of you may be on here longer. Some of you may drop off, and that's fine. You may come and go. Just know that our podcasts are recorded. You can find them on Facebook. You can find them on YouTube, right? So if you don't want to watch the whole thing, or you want to go back and check it out later, please feel free to do so. So without no further ado, right, we wanted to talk, we've been talking a lot about Trump on this podcast, and uh, today we're going to cover Biden and what I consider a scandal.
Mm-hmm.
And I know that hurts some people's feelings that I say that, but when you look at Trump and you look at Biden and you compare the two, right? One thing about Trump, he's up in your face about what he's going to do. You may not like it, and there's a lot of things that Trump does that I do not like. Let me be very clear about that up front. But Biden, in his 4 years, he would smile and tell you all the things you wanted to hear, but behind the scenes, it was chaotic, it was hectic, right? And so, if it's you just want to hear somebody telling you what you want to hear, then by all means, that's the kind of person that you want to vote for. If you want somebody who's going to get some stuff done and correct some stuff, then you vote a different way. One of the things I like to correct from the last podcast, Jim, because I had a discussion with this with one of my friends. I think they're still friends. I'm not quite sure yet. Is I said that I voted for President Trump all three elections, and in 2020, 2020, I actually didn't vote for him. I voted for the Libertarian Party, right?
Oh,
So
okay.
when you're doing it live, sometimes you might make a mistake, and so we don't go back and edit it. So for the record, I did not vote for him all three times, right? I did the first time and the last time. So I just want to get that out on the table.
Well, you came back. That's the important part.
So the thing that really concerns me is the cover up of his cognitive decline, right? The number one issue is that cognitive decline and the cover up, right, of his decline. That is the thing that just drives me absolutely crazy. And so I did a lot of research on this, and one of the things that in the research that I found out is, okay, yeah, everybody's admitting, yeah, there was cognitive decline, but how did it affect his performance, as far as the decision-making process? And the answer is, while I don't agree with some of the decisions or quite a few of the decisions he made on certain things, I got to concur with that. But God, why in God's earth was he running for another term? Right. And the whole cover up, and then his pulling out last minute, the fact that they didn't allow a primary to happen.
Exactly.
Right? Those are the issues, right, that we want to talk about. So, Jim, I've been talking quite a bit. I'm going to give you an opportunity to jump in here.
Well, that last point I want to hit on first is, they talk about, Trump and the Republicans being a threat to democracy. That kind of stunt right there, where the people didn't even get to vote in a primary or vote for who was going to be the candidate. That's the threat to democracy. When you take that kind of thing out of the hands of the people, that's the threat to democracy. And as for Biden's decline, I mean, you knew he wasn't. Even when he was running the first time, you knew he wasn't capable. I mean, you never saw him. You never heard him. He couldn't put together a sentence, and he got the most votes of anybody in presidential history. Come on. And, they're so quick now to mention Trump's cognitive decline. They noticed that in just 3 or 4 months. Come on. And it's not just his decline. He's got advanced prostate cancer. That stuff doesn't pop up overnight. They knew he's got the best doctors in the world. These people knew this. These people knew it from the beginning. And if you were to go to, say, YouTube, any of the presidential libraries or anything that's on there, and pull up him talking in a speech from when he was vice president under Obama to when he's president, like last year, 2 years ago, whenever, it's like two different people. You can see the decline. It don't take much at all to see that. And the fact that things were done, laws were passed, decisions were made, and he wasn't capable, he wasn't aware. And to what degree we just don't know yet. But the fact that it happened at all, I mean, that's a threat to democracy when you've got a bunch of people behind the scenes making the decisions, you doing the the whole auto pin thing they talked about. I mean, you've got all this going on, and you've got people that weren't elected to the office making these decisions. And it's scary. It's scary. And they knew this. They knew it all along. They had to. And especially when they declined to prosecute him for the whole records thing, because he wasn't capable of being prosecuted because of his mental state. I mean, come on, but he's okay to be the president. And now, of course, everything, all the rats in the sinking ship. Yeah, I knew it. Yeah, we knew it. Come on, people. I mean, it doesn't pan out.
Because those are several areas I'd like to get into today, Jim. And starting with, Jake Tapper and another guy wrote a book about Biden and his decline, and they wrote it pretty good. They said he had his good days and his bad days, right? And they said, but the beginning of 2023, the ratio of those functioning and non-functioning days started to change drastically, and also non-functioning Biden was getting worse. So they write that, but then let's go back to 2021 when Sage Steele interviewed Biden, right, on ESPN. She was given a very specific set of questions to ask. She couldn't divert. She couldn't do follow-on questions. She was told to follow the script, right, exactly as it was, and not divert whatsoever, right? I mean, it was very clear as early as 2021 that there were problems and that he could not function and handle questions live. I mean, it was clear. It was absolutely clear. So, as far as his cognitive decline, I would say, it probably wasn't as bad in 21, right, 22, but definitely in 23, it started to get to the point where it became a problem.
Mm-hmm.
So, the other thing that was interesting that you brought up is, the whole thing about the interview. And I read the notes from Ben-Hur's interview. And the thing he wrote in the interview is that he did intentionally and willfully keep classified documents. So here's my issue. It's not the issue that he did it, right? Because Trump's done it. I'm sure others have done it, right? My issue is the double standard, right?
Mhm.
You want to roast one person for it, but another person, it's not okay,
Yeah, that's
right?
my
And
big
that's
thing.
that's the issue for me. That's
Yep,
the real issue, right?
absolutely.
I'm not good. If you're going to prosecute one, prosecute all. If you and I, Jim, when we were in the working for the government, I still work for the government as a contractor. We would take classified documents home willfully and retain them, uh, and they found out we'd be in trouble, right? But
Yeah,
it's okay for certain people to do it. It's okay. That bothers me. That's an issue for me. These
yeah,
are
absolutely.
these are all little things, right? But when you pile up all the little things, right? And I got comments today about, the 34 indictments against Trump, for felonies, right? Well, there is a breadcrumb trail there with Biden, right? And when you look at each of the little things, they add up. And if,
Mhm.
if, if somebody was to go after him under the microscope, the way they went after Trump, I think you'd come to a very similar situation.
Absolutely. And not just Biden, but any politician. I mean, come on, they're politicians. I
Yeah.
mean, if you go looking in anybody's closet, you're going to find skeletons. I don't care who you are.
Yeah.
But if they decide to go and look in your closet, Kevin, but not mine, that's just not right. I
Yeah.
mean, and we're not even talking party politics here. We're strictly talking, his cognitive decline didn't have anything to do with him being a Democrat. So we're not talking this, Reagan, loved Reagan. His second term, you could see it. You could see it. He didn't need to serve out that second term. So we're not talking party politics here. We're not talking, especially when we talk about the double standard, because that eats me raw too. It's not party. If you're gonna prosecute one, if you're gonna investigate one, investigate the other. And like you said, if they were to pull Biden apart, or Hillary Clinton, or Obama, or the Bush, I mean, any of them, you're right. They would come up with pretty much about the same thing. Details may vary, but that'd be about the same things. And it just nobody's ever held accountable for these either. Biden, and I'm not saying anything untoward here. The man, he's got stage 4, I think it is, prostate cancer. He's in
No, it's
cognitive decline.
metastasized to the bone. It's pretty serious.
Yeah, he's pretty old. He's not going to live to suffer any consequences of any of his actions or inaction. He's not going to live to see it. So it's kind of like, why, if I don't have to, face accountability, why wouldn't I do it? And when you look at these folks, these politicians that do these things, it's like nobody ever is held accountable for them. They can do anything they want, and even when they're caught. Remember Hillary Clinton? Yeah, we found out, but we declined to prosecute. What? Are you serious? We found out about Trump. Yeah, we're going to prosecute. I mean, come on. And it is, they'll sit up their podiums all day long. So, the law applies to everybody equally. Yeah. No, it doesn't.
Well, it's interesting. Obviously during his term, there was all the investigation on, pay to play, right? And, the money
Mhm.
that the family was making. So on the house.gov, the oversight website, right, it talks about the Biden's influence peddling timeline. This is right from the House Oversight Committee. And while he has never been prosecuted or really, right, been turned over to the DOJ for a real investigation, it talks about it started in 2009 with Romania, right? There was a guy in Romania, and I'm right on here, who began depositing money in Biden associate bank accounts, and which ultimately made the way that the money made it to the Biden accounts, right? Totaling of $1 million. And it was over $3 million to the Biden family and their associates. And it went on 2009, 2013, 2014, 2015, 2016. And you can see that this is not something that just started with the Ukraine. I mean, it started way before that.
Mm-hmm.
So this is nothing new, right? This has been going on. And again, when you look at Trump, right? So they're always getting on Trump for, him making money off the things he's doing. But in the background, right? Because the Biden family is collecting and playing on the name, right? But
Mm-hmm.
that's okay. And that's
Yeah.
the issue I have. Double standards, right? And again, all these things by themselves, right? You can say, oh, it's just that one thing. Yeah, no, it's several things.
Mm-hmm. It indicates a pattern.
100%. And he emphatically claimed he was not present when his son Hunter was talking to the Chinese, right? He emphatically denied it. And so there's no proving that he was there. So I'm not going to say he was there, right?
Mm-hmm.
But it makes you wonder.
Yeah.
Really makes you wonder. The big guy's here with me. Who is the big guy?
Mm-hmm.
Who's the big guy?
The big guy. Well, as far as your relatives, your offspring, that kind of thing, and what they do, I don't believe, unless you're involved, I don't believe that you should be held accountable for that, because you see that all the time. When your brother went and did this, it's going to be bad for you in your campaign. I don't hold that kind of thing against him.
I agreed. I'm not holding him accountable for
Right.
what his son may have done.
But
right?
if he's
100%.
involved,
yeah, 100%.
Yeah.
If my son goes out and does something that he shouldn't do, right?
Mm-hmm.
Right. I certainly don't want to be held accountable. So, the standards got to be the same across the board.
Yeah. Yeah.
The next major thing was the withdrawal from Afghanistan. Right.
Oh my God.
So you look at that, and so let's talk about the background, right? Who set the precedence for the withdrawal of Afghanistan? It 100% was Donald Trump, right? He set the precedence, but it was conditions based. It wasn't timeline based, right? It was conditions based. And he said, we got to get out of Afghanistan. All I can tell you is that not only do we lose lives, there are things going on I wish I could talk about that are directly impacting national security today that I deal with at work related to that withdrawal. Right? So it's a crime. To me, it's an absolute ever-living crime, the way that was done. If you look at all the money, Jim, we spent and all the lives that were, now I'm not just talking the lives at the Abbey Gate, I'm talking in general, all the lives lost in Afghanistan. And to know that we haphazardly pulled out of there the way we did and put the Taliban right back in charge. Cannot understand that for the life of me. I agree we're at a no-win situation, but the way we did it for me was horrible.
Yeah, that was a mess. That was an absolute disaster. Of course, it drew parallels to Saigon at the time it happened.
Yeah.
So I can see that. I can definitely see that.
And then let's talk about immigration, right? So I'm not going to get into all the details of the immigration. Here's what I'm going to focus on, right? Red states were being persecuted for busing illegal immigrants. Yes, I use the word illegal immigrants because that's what they are. They're here illegally. To blue cities, right? And there was court precedences. They were going to do all these things. But how about the Biden administration flying in flights and dropping people off in cities all over the U.S.?
Yeah.
That was going on.
Mm-hmm.
That really happened. So it concerns me, right? Here again, once again, Jim, the double standard,
Mm-hmm.
right? The double standard out there. Very frustrating.
Well, I mean, part of that whole thing about busing from the red states up to the blue cities, where it's easy to make laws and say things and hold a position when you're not suffering the consequences of it, when you're so far removed that it doesn't affect you.
Yeah.
Like, don't build the wall, yet you live behind walls in a neighborhood that nobody can afford to live in, so you don't have to deal with it, right?
Yeah.
So you're up in a blue city, you're up north. Let's just say Chicago for the heck of it. You're up in Chicago making these decisions, and then, but who's dealing with it? You're dealing with the people in Texas, the people in Arizona. They're the ones dealing with all this influx. Well, when they're knocking on your door, it kind of makes a different effect. And you heard how bad they were hooting and hollering when it was happening.
100%.
It's like, you get the idea now? You get the idea?
Absolutely. But the key is that the administration was flying people in.
Yeah.
Right. On this, I forget the name of the program. There were from certain countries, there was X number of people that could fly in. Right.
Mm-hmm.
So the key is you're flying all these people in. What kind of infrastructure, what kind of support was put in place for these people when they were flown into these cities? Right. That was the concern I had. Right. So there was no structure into how that was being done. But when people were being bused to different cities, and we can get into the whole details, whether they were baited on the bus or were they not baited on the bus. I don't know. I don't know the details, and I'm not going to speculate.
Mm-hmm.
But I know that people were being flown in by the planeful to different cities in the United States and being dropped off without a support mechanism in place. The last area, Jim, that I got that really bothers me is the control that the government tried to put on social media, specifically during COVID, right? There's a lot of misinformation out there.
No, we
right?
could do a whole show.
We could talk about that forever. But what I do know, and this is my concern, is that, I mean, Zuckerberg came back and said, right, that he felt that the government put way too much pressure on, right, to delete stuff. And they were constantly going back and forth, right? And they would disagree. But also there were former government employees working for some of these agencies that were having Slack communications with federal employees about this kind of stuff. And while any communication on the social media company's site is not necessarily has to be provided as a record, any communication that a government employee is having should be available and should be available through FOIA, right? It's not classified. Therefore, it should be available, Jim, for us to see what those conversations were, but they're not available. Imagine that.
Yeah.
So it makes you kind of wonder what was really going on behind the scene.
There's a lot going on behind the scenes. If we dip back to Biden for a moment, we don't even know still who was in charge of the government at that point. I mean, a lot of fingers have been pointed at Senator Warren. But I don't think it was just her. But the fact that all this is going on explains a lot. It really finally explains the preemptive pardons. I think that goes a long way to explaining the preemptive pardons there for Fauci and everybody else. It explains a lot, but we don't even know who was doing that, or if anybody's ever going to be held accountable. And the fact that Warren is still a congressperson just blows my mind. But it's just amazing the things that they could have done. Because I mean, what is going to be the repercussions of all that? Because I mean, Trump, just like, and this is something I don't like either. All we do now when we change administrations is come in and sign executive orders to undo everything the guy before us did. It's going back and forth. But how many things were undone that didn't need to be undone because they weren't even properly done. It's just, I don't even know why an auto pin exists. That needs to be taken out back and destroyed. that's something that shouldn't even exist in a republic such as ours. Where the people are supposed to have the say. We elect officials to make these decisions for us, and they're going to do it all with a machine. No, that don't sit well with me.
But I think this is one area you and I will disagree on, and that's okay. Look, an auto pen has been used, I think, going back, I don't know, 80 years. It's been available and used by Republicans and Democrats, right? That's not my concern. That's not my concern. My concern is how many were signed that he didn't know about, right?
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
That's the thing. There's a bunch of stuff I've read out there about, well, are the pardons really valid? If get over that, right? He's not the only president to ever use the auto pen. My question is, how many were signed that he didn't know about? That's the real issue.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I mean, I don't like that idea, but you're right that without his knowledge is the big factor.
100%.
Yeah. That's some crazy stuff. But we got other stuff that comes from all this too. Is we've got the was it the big celebration that was yesterday, the big parade, and then we've got the No Kings protest all across the country. I don't even know kings. I don't understand that at all. The fact that you can stand in a country and do that. The irony is that if you had a king, you couldn't, most likely couldn't do that. So, but it seems that everything.
Clear of your comments so nobody misconstrues it. You're not complaining the fact that they were protesting. You're just the irony of the
irony. Yeah. I mean, they have the right. First Amendment. We did this whole thing. Yeah. They have the right to protest as long as it remains peaceful. Absolutely.
Yes, sir.
But the subject is what gets me. No kings. I'm like, and Trump himself even said, I'm not a king. I have trouble getting anything approved. I mean, that's hilarious. But the fact that you can sit there and say, we don't want any kings, shows that you don't have any. So I don't understand the whole point. It's just disruption is what it is. I don't know. I've never seen any president, and all presidents get, gets hassled from the right or left, whoever the opposing party is at the time. I've never seen one get so opposed and so a roadblock in front of everything he tries to do as much as this president. I mean, right or wrong, they don't even care if it's good or bad. He tries it, they will stop it.
Well, I'll tell you, I think there's one other area about under the Biden administration that we got to talk about, Jim, and it's near and close and personal to us, right? And that is that there are immigrants coming into this country, illegal immigrants that are being provided shelter, medical care, food. And how many homeless veterans do we have on the street that are not getting the same opportunity, Jim?
Yeah. And how many result in that 22 a day that we always talk about, we always hear about?
100%. So it was funny. I was down on the dock hanging with some folks and had a conversation. I think it was yesterday. It was an interesting conversation. So this gentleman, he works independently, right? So he doesn't work for a company. He's an independent person. And he tried to buy insurance on the open market. And they were going to charge him $2,500 a month. And his frustration was though he makes good money, he can't afford to pay $2,500 a month for medical care, right? But he said people coming into this country illegally were being provided medical care. He just couldn't understand why, right? He was being forced to pay so much. He didn't say he wanted to pay $5, right? But he said $2,500 a month for medical care, right?
Yeah.
So it's a valid point, right? So that's another category of, I want to help other people. Don't get me wrong. I want to be very clear. I want to help other countries. I want to help other people be successful. 100%.
Yeah. Nobody wants to see anybody get hurt or oppressed.
And there are people that are coming to this country illegal. We've talked about this before on other podcasts. And I just want to make that clear that there are people that are coming here that are being persecuted in their country, and they have 100% right to get safe haven in this country and be taken care of, right? But that's the exception, not the rule, Jim, right? Let's take care of our own.
Yep.
Let's take care of our own. Look at the number of homeless people that are living on the street. Let's take care of them. Let's take care 100% the veterans. Why are we not taking care of the homeless veterans? Right? So this is the point, is under his administration, the people were being flooded into this country. I agree that Congress needs to, they make the laws and they need to get their act together on immigration. But the law's pretty clear as it exists here about coming into this country, right? And not following the rules to come into this country. And they were getting everything they needed, while those that live here and need help were not getting it. That's the issue.
Well, they were getting rooms in 5-star hotels in New York City, completely paid for by your and my dime.
So it's frustrating. So is Donald Trump an angel and walking around with a halo and I'm bowing down to everything he does? Absolutely not. But he's not the topic of discussion today. Well, he will be in some of the discussions we're going to follow on with the explosive last 2 weeks we've had.
Yeah. There is a young man in my extended family who is a Mexican immigrant. And he's watching all this, watching everything that's going on. He's really upset because he said, you know, I've worked my butt off for the last 4 years to do everything I need to do to come and live in this country legally. And these guys are coming in, breaking the laws, getting everything handed to him. He's really upset about it. And that's what I've been saying the whole, you know, the whole time, years and years I've been saying this, is it's not just the fact that they're doing it. It's the fact that the people are doing it right, not just the immigrants that are doing it right, but the people that were born here can't get a leg up. But if you come here illegally, you got it made. I mean, I could tell you story after story that I've experienced, you know, dealing, you know, with banks and dealing with, you know, other people, other places and stuff with, you know, illegal immigrants or immigration in general, and what they get versus what I get. You know, I've seen the attention completely change the moment they walk in. I mean, I'm no longer looked at. I mean, they, especially at a bank, because you walk in here, you can get finance for anything. And it's just difficult. One story I will tell you, because I was born in Germany, but I was born as an American citizen, but every now and then I play with it. I went to a hospital one time and had to go to emergency room for something. This has been years ago. And I couldn't pay, my copay for emergency room was $200. I mean, I barely had $200 in my pocket a week, let alone $200 for emergency room visit. And they wasn't going to let me out of the emergency room because they have the magnetic lock on the door, you know, they weren't going to let me out. So I literally looked at them and said, I was born in Germany. I'm an illegal immigrant. Bill me. And they let me out.
Well, Jim, you know, I think we've covered the trail on the Biden scandal pretty damn well, right? And it's just amazing how people want to ignore the breadcrumb trail, right? That's there. And say, you know, he did all these great and wonderful things. I'm trying to figure out what those great and wonderful things are. And I think we could pull the trigger on this more, but I'll leave it alone. I think his record speaks for itself, right? And it's go ahead.
I'm sorry. I'm like, the one thing I will say, and this is in general, this isn't Biden related. We have 3 prerequisites to be president of the United States: born here, resided here 14 years, and you're 35 years of age. We need to add a 4th, and that's an age limit. We need to add an age limit. I mean, when you're 80 years old, I mean, you don't need to be sitting in there making decisions. I mean, there has to be an age limit. And
that it would apply to the current person who's residing in office.
It would indeed. I mean, I'm willing to take that hit.
Yeah.
It needs to be, and like we were talking about earlier, same standard across the board.
Yeah, 100%. 100%. And they can do that all the while doing term limits for Congress.
Oh yeah. Oh yeah.
So let's get into the last 2 weeks, because so much has happened in the past 2 weeks that we could not anticipate and plan our podcast, because we do a live based on what has happened in the past 2 weeks. First is the riots, right? Started in LA.
Mm-hmm.
And let's just talk about that for a minute, Jim. So there were riots. Let's be honest. It started because there were ICE agents that were responding to a search warrant, right?
Mm-hmm.
That's how it started, and turned into, right. I think there's been a lot of peaceful protests. I think yesterday there was a lot of peaceful protesting across the nation, and I laud that.
Yeah, that's how it should be.
In LA, there were some very violent protests, right? And I'm all about protesting, but when you cross the line, for me, it's no longer, you've crossed the line, and you deserve whatever punishment you get from law enforcement authorities. And I want to be clear about that. Law enforcement authorities, because we're going to talk about the mobilization of the National Guard and the Marines coming in here in a minute. But I'm not good with the violence.
No. And I mean, people are going to, when you have a community of criminals, and I'm not talking just illegal immigrants, but I'm talking about the criminal element among the illegal immigrants. When you have a neighborhood full of criminal immigrants that are going unchecked, you're going to have violence. That's just how they live their lives. That happening is something you need to deal with. But what bothers me is the elected leaders' response to it and their defense of it. And the media coming in, and you could see stuff burning behind them and saying, yeah, this peaceful protest, blah, blah, blah. They pulled that again. They pulled that trick again. And then, the governor and the mayor are up there and everything, talking about how we defend our people. We like our people. We love our people here, blah, 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 blah. And I'm like, what about the legal citizens whose lives are in danger all around you? Why are their lives not important, but these criminals' lives are? Why are their lives so much more important? And that actually fits across the board to a lot of arguments these days. Why are their lives so much more important than your law-abiding legal residents that voted for you? That's what irks me.
I agree with that. And one of the areas that I think is super important is that I'm all about the ICE going out there and getting the violent criminals and arresting them. I'm all about that, right? I'm not about just going out and looking for people, right? Let me be very, very, very clear on that, right? Let's get the violent ones out of the community, 100%. Super important to me. But then,
I'm sorry. What if, and I get what you're saying, just going out and looking for, I'm going to, I'm going to check out this Home Depot parking lot, see if there's any illegals in it, that kind of thing. But what if you go there and there happen to be two violent offenders you found in that group that if you weren't doing that, you would never have seen? My line's a little bit further. Yeah. My line's a little bit further over than yours. I still don't call this number if you suspect your neighbor is an illegal immigrant. To me, that's where my line is. You don't need you picking up the phone and informing on your neighbor. There's something about that just sits wrong with me.
100%. I think we're in agreement on that. Hey, listen, we got somebody posted a comment in here.
Oh.
And it said, when parents are deported and children are left behind, many blame the government instead of the parents that put the kids in that position. And I agree with that. But at the same token, I think this is where we got to be very deliberate in our processes. And if we go and deport parents, we got to look at the whole situation, right? Are those kids American citizens because they were born here? right? I don't know the full story, right? If they're not, are the kids being deported with the families back, with the parents back? But it's a great point. I agree with you on that the parents put them in that situation. I do agree, and they blame the government.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It goes back to it's the same thing. It seems to always be the law enforcement agency that's the problem, and that's not the case. It's a problem with accountability, which again goes to any topic we want to discuss. It goes to accountability. If you were to rob a bank and had minor children and you got arrested and sent to jail, is it the government's fault that your children no longer have a father? It's the same thing.
It is the same thing. 100%, Jim. I really want to jump into Trump's mobilization of the National Guard and the Marines that were sent to LA. And it's quite interesting because under Title 10, he has the authority to do so, right? He has the authority to mobilize the National Guard. And he did it, right? And I think this is what people don't understand is they were not policing the riots. They were simply protecting the federal workers and the federal buildings. And that is what he mobilized them for. And so I can't understand. I mean, so they're crazy about it. Obviously, if he would have crossed the line, and for me, it would have been a red line, Jim, if he would have declared martial law and then those authorities would have extended, I would have definitely had an issue with that, 100%. Because the local law enforcement and the county law enforcement and the state has a responsibility to control the issues going on as far as the riots are concerned.
Yeah.
Right. And so all he was doing was mobilizing to protect the federal workers and the federal buildings.
But, and this is, and I share your trepidation. It's normally the governor requesting National Guard, but when you have a leadership, which I talked about a moment ago, when you have a leadership that's doing nothing to protect its citizens, somebody has to step up and, for lack of a better term, be the parent. Somebody has to step up and do something to protect these people. And I'm not talking about others, of course, but the people, the collateral damage, the people that are just happen to live and work in the area, whatever. I don't know how many of those, because of course they don't care about those, so they're not going to cover them on the news. So, but how many of those people, if you're not doing something, by all means, state is a sovereign entity. If you got a leader that's doing the right thing and taking care of their people, you don't interfere. You let them do their job. That's what they're there for. That's what they were elected for. When they're not, that's when somebody needs to step in and say, hey, and by the law, he can do that. And the courts actually backed him up on that and said he could do it. Where I came up against a little bit of a judge, I didn't like the idea of federal troops, but sometimes the hard call has to be made,
Yeah, but their role was very clear. Their role was very clear, right? Very clear. And I'll tell you, I watched the news conference. I think it was, I can't remember when I watched it. Maybe it was last week, and I don't remember when I watched it. But I watched it on CNN, and it was the district attorney and the police chief of LA and the county police chief. And they were pretty clear. They said, hey, LA County is over 11 million people. And the district attorney, and he's a brand new district attorney, right? He got voted in because Garcon was not doing his job. And he was very clear. He said 11 million people live there. And he goes, though the news wants to make it look like LA is a war zone, he said the real riot portion of that is confined to a small area where the burning of cars or the issues were going on was very small. And they have enough law enforcement, 18,000 law enforcement people to control that. But yes, was the county and city and the state slow to respond? Yeah. But did they respond, Jim? The answer is yes. And they made it very clear. If you did something illegal and it's on camera and you got away with it, don't think we're not coming after you. He goes, because we're going to come after you and prosecute you. One of the incidents, it was kind of funny. This one guy threw 2 beer cans at the police, and the police told him, this is because the police, I think it was the county police chief was talking about. No, it must have been the LA City police chief. He said the police warned him to go home and go away, and he proceeded to throw a 3rd beer can at the police, and he got arrested.
Mm-hmm.
Right? I mean, come on. Pretty simple.
Yeah.
So returning fire considered escalation. I'm not sure what you mean by that, Burgermeister. I'm not sure what, I don't know who's returning fire considered escalation. I think if you're fired upon, you fire back. I mean, for the riot control and for they were using rubber bullets. I will tell you this though, Jim. To be fair, I did see some pretty disturbing videos from the riots where the police were getting a little carried away. I saw them get carried away.
Yeah.
And it's concerning, right? And while the district attorney is going to make sure that those that violate and got violent are prosecuted to the full extent of the law, I surely would like to see, there was one guy, he was on the ground, the policeman was handling him, and then one of the police on the horse stomped on the guy. So then the guy got up and tried to run away, and the policeman picked him up, pulled him back down, and started, going to town on him. Right? That's got to be held accountable too.
Mm-hmm.
But back to the mobilization of the National Guard.
Yeah.
For protection of federal employees and buildings doing their job, fully within the authority of the federal government to do.
Yeah. And I mean, it's been done before. And one of the last times, in all honesty, of course, everybody was talking about January 6th, but the time before that, 1992 in Los Angeles.
Yeah.
And I mean, the federal troops, that's the Insurrection Act of 1807. He has the right to do that. But again, to me, that would be a last resort, federal troops. I don't.
Absolutely. Let's talk about the shooting of the Minnesota Democratic politicians, right? Let's bring that up.
Yeah, that's where I believe a lot of this ties in.
I know it believes ties in, but this is crazy to me. I do not condone any violence towards politicians, right? And this guy had a list of 70 Democrats.
Yes.
And he was appointed by the previous governor, and he was reappointed by Governor Walz through 2023. So I don't know. Obviously, they need to catch this guy or eliminate him for his acts. I prefer they just eliminate him and put him through a slow, painful death and set an example. From my opinion, I hope he dies a slow, painful death.
Yep. Want to hear my opinion?
Absolutely.
My opinion, the timing is extraordinary because all of a sudden we weren't talking about Biden's incompetence anymore. And I don't think that guy's ever going to be found.
I think they're going to find him, Jim.
First rule of assassination, kill the assassin.
Yeah, I think they're going to find him. I just don't condone the violence. Just like the violence against Trump, just like was it Whitmer? Was it the guys were threatening to hurt her? Remember a couple of years back?
Whitmer. The name sounds familiar. Yeah.
Yeah. So I don't condone any violence towards politicians.
But
and it's funny because one of the people that is angry at me for doing this podcast on the Biden scandal called the assassination attempts on Trump fake or false.
I have heard that they were staged to bolster his popularity. I've heard that.
Yeah.
I've heard that. But the one thing about those politicians, again, same as you, I do not condone. There's other ways to handle things. I don't condone that level of violence. I find it very telling that just a few days before, she was the only Democrat that sided with the Republicans to repeal health care for illegal immigrants. And then she's murdered in her home.
I wasn't tracking that.
Yep. That to me just speaks volumes. That is the kind of thing you would make a conspiracy movie out of right there. I mean, that's writing on the wall, you know?
Yep. Well, I don't know why he had a list of 70 people. I don't know why he was killing politicians. I hope we find out, right? Hope we find out.
Well, that's why I don't think they're going to find him. Simply because she was a Democratic politician that switched sides on the very hot button item, and she just happened to be killed. Are those 70? If that really is a conspiracy, was he really going to kill any more? I mean, you could go all day long on that, and I'm not going to speculate. But
the fact that he got to 2 politicians is, for me, is unfathomable. But nonetheless, he did. He's posing as a police officer, right at the door. Just makes you wonder.
Yeah.
Jim, how about Karine Jean-Pierre leaving the Democratic Party?
That blew me away. I mean, she was so staunch and so stoic in her defense of the president at the time, you know, and just, oh my God. And wow. That was I couldn't.
So that was her job. Her job was to defend the president. And I think, you know, whether you agree with her comments or what she did, I would argue she did her job well.
Yeah.
Whether she agreed with what was going on or not, she did her job well. However, yeah, go ahead.
I was going to say, I had a political science teacher in high school. Politics is the art of persuasion. So that would fit right into that mantra.
And so she went over to the Independent Party, but right, her book is all about a White House in chaos, right? I forget the exact words. I had them up earlier. The name of her book. It's called Independence something. Anyhow,
I'd be real worried if I were her.
So, you know, obviously I agree with her that you don't have to think, you know, you can't stay in the box. You have to think outside the box. And there was too many people in the Democrat and Republican Party, right, that just pledge allegiance to the party and don't think on their own. And I think that's a message she's trying to send everybody, right, which is good. Mm-hmm. I agree with that.
I don't know if I could have dealt with it if you told me she went Republican. So I'm glad that she went independent. Yeah, there's been a lot of dissension. A lot of people over the last few years have left the Democrat Party.
Yes. They have. Some have crossed over to the Republican Party. Others have gone independent. But there's been a lot of people leaving the Democratic Party. I would agree with that. And I think, go ahead.
I was going to say the thing that gets me about it is it don't seem to matter how many people they lose. It don't mean how many ideals fall apart, how many attempts at whatever fail. They won't get off the same tactics. You know, if it was a company, the CEO and people would step back and say, you know what? This isn't working. We need to try a whole new strategy. These guys aren't doing this. They're sticking with the same script.
It's funny. We're getting ready to have a primary here in Virginia on Tuesday. And then, by the way, I'm an election officer, so I take pride in helping out and making sure everybody gets to vote. But the commercials I see running on TV about how everybody's going to stand up to Trump. And I understand there's a lot of people that have issues with Trump's doing, but if that is your message, what is your real message to the people?
Yeah.
Right?
What are you going to do to make my life better? Not the whole they're getting elected on hate Trump. Okay, that's fine. So you're going to spend the next 2 or 6 years just trying to stop everything he does. How are you going to make my life better? What are you going to do to put food on my table? What are you going to do to make, my trip to work cheaper? What are you going to do? You know what I mean? I can't. I would be ticked off if my elected officials, that was their entire thing. Even if he's doing something good, like I mentioned a little bit ago, even if he's doing something good, we're going to stop it. We are going to stand up to him. You stand up to somebody that's doing something wrong. You don't stand up to somebody that's doing something right. And it's just as impossible to do everything wrong as it is to do everything right. So some of the stuff he's doing, no matter who you are looking at it, some of the stuff he's doing has to be right by just by sheer odds. But you're going to block everything he does. Can you imagine if we did that to a Democrat president? If we just said, we're going to stop everything this guy does, no matter what it is. Oh my God, there'd be rioting in the streets. Again.
All right. How about the celebration of the Army's 250th birthday? By the way, happy birthday, Jim. Us both being Army veterans.
Oh yeah, happy birthday. Yeah.
I have mixed emotions about this, right? And I'll tell you why. Number one is the 250th birthday. So for that perspective, I think it's okay to celebrate, right? I darn feel sorry for, and I know, Jim, I served for 20 years. I think, how many years do you serve?
6.
6. So, when you're in the military, you do the biting of what you're told to do, right? And you carry it on whether you like it or not.
Mm-hmm.
I'm sure that there's a lot of those soldiers that would have loved to have the weekend off, but not. They were in DC doing the parade, right? And I think it was important to honor 250 years, right? It's a big deal. I always wonder, though, because I'll say this, because I do think that Trump's a narcissistic kind of guy, and it was his birthday.
Hey, I don't.
It wasn't about the 250th birthday of the Army, right? It was all about, even though his speech, right, was right on the money, it was really about him.
Hey, I know who the guy is. I'm not going to disagree with that.
So, they talk about the money they spent on the parade, and there was lots of money spent on the parade. And, if we're looking to save money, that's one of my biggest issues, right, on my conservative values is the national debt running out of control. But again, so that's why I stay very conflicted on that, right?
Yeah, I can see that. And here's where I stand. First of all, the amount of money spent. I've seen, estimates $45 million or more. You and I were soldiers. You know that you get paid no matter what you do. So those soldiers were already paid. They weren't giving them extra money. They were already on payroll. It didn't cost a dime to have all those soldiers there. Not a dime.
Yeah. I think it was getting all the uniforms issued, right? Even the older uniforms. I think it was moving the tanks and the equipment up there, right?
Yeah.
Those are the things, right? The flyover of equipment. Yeah. I think it was the security, right? All those things, all the things they do to prep the streets, the work that's going to have to be done to fix the streets after.
Yeah, but I mean, the show of national pride is priceless, especially in times like this. And then, again, you have the right to do it. If you're going to protest against America, what are you even doing here? So, I mean, you want to protest something? Okay, fine. You're going to protest something. But I'm not going to – I don't understand protesting. There's presidents come and go. We're talking about the country. You know what I mean? It's a national celebration, national pride. I mean, come on. For some reason, that's a bad thing now. I understand that that's happening. I don't understand why or how. But if you're protesting against that celebration, I mean, you're protesting against celebrating your country while you're celebrating all these people coming in unchecked. I mean, where's your loyalty at?
Well, Jim, let's get to the last big deal, and that's the conflict in the Middle East that erupted.
Yeah, boy, I was surprised.
Yeah. I will say this. I truly believe, whether you agree with what's going on, I just want to discuss the fact that I think the Mossad is probably one of the best intelligence elements in the world. They laid the groundwork for that. They tricked 3 Air Force generals to be in one location, stay one location, so they could take them out. Right? They took out the scientists, the senior scientists. I mean, that doesn't happen, right, without careful intelligence planning and gathering.
Mm-hmm.
You know, here's another area that I'm conflicted, Jim. This is preemptive strikes.
Yeah.
And you're like, should they be doing it? And the answer is, if that country under that regime is able to have a functioning nuclear weapon and uses it just one time, no matter where they use it,
Yeah.
people are going to kick themselves in the butt for not being preemptive. So I'm very conflicted on the fact that
Mm-hmm.
Israel took preemptive strikes, but understanding the greater good, I got to tell you, I'm behind it.
Yeah. There was I can't find where my page went, but they had asked Trump to get involved with the war, and he said no.
Yeah, but it's not off the table.
Yeah, it's
If
not off the table,
Iran
but
attacks
yeah,
American bases, he said he will get, if he attacks American bases or American territory, that we will get involved.
yeah, I can see that.
Yeah,
I can see that. Another war. Awesome.
I don't see this one ending anytime soon, Jim, and I think it's going to
Mm-mm.
escalate. The question is, I read today, supposedly, right? I hadn't had any time to fact check this, that they wanted to take out the supreme leader, and Trump said no. So that's an interesting perspective in itself, Jim. To do a regime change. I mean, we did it. So not
Mm-hmm.
saying it's right. It's one of those things that you have to think about.
Yeah, and I mean, the thing about getting involved in a conflict over there is, and I said this as far back as because I joined during Desert Storm, and of course we've been going back and forth. We've been over there ever since, and that is a region of the world that has been involved in deadly conflicts since its inception. We're not going to stop it. We're not going to make a dent. They've been killing each other over whatever and the Holy Land for millennia. We're not going to stop that. We've been around 250 years. We just talked about. We're not going to solve that problem. So getting drawn into it, I agree. Let's not get drawn into it. But if Americans are brought into it, if Americans are threatened or attacked, or then we're going to have to. But still, it's not going to solve anything. I mean, you're dealing with an enemy that just they don't even care how they will win by attrition. If they take us down but lose 100 million people, they're fine with that. I mean, we don't want to lose 100 million people. We're going to try to do things a little bit different, but they don't care. They've been killing each other forever. We're not going to solve that.
This evening, I was watching BBC News, and they were covering the what's going on, and Iran has directed that the citizens shouldn't be posting to social media any of the destruction or any of the stuff related to this, but they've been doing inversely the opposite. And I'll tell you, it is unifying the Iranians. The Iranians are not happy with their government, their leadership.
Mm-hmm.
But I will tell you, they're also not warm to the idea of Israel being their savior. No pun intended.
Yeah.
So it's an interesting situation because while the whole idea of regime change might not bring the regime you want in there.
Right. I mean, yeah, it could be worse. I mean, you just don't know.
Yeah. Yeah.
Because I'm reading some updates on stuff right now that's only a couple hours old. 100 unmanned aerial vehicles, drones, have been intercepted so far. Wow. At least 224 killed, over 1,200 injured in Israeli strikes.
Yeah.
I mean, and there's just more. I'm just scrolling down the page.
Yeah. Well, Jim, I think we've exhausted all the subjects for this evening.
Yep. A lot going on this week, last couple of weeks.
It's been busy, been extremely busy.
There's still more to come on it. We still got to see more about what they find uncover with Biden. There's more going on with this war. There's more going on with the immigration and the riots. And oh my God.
Absolutely. Well, Jim, I know we covered what some people consider a pretty controversial subject, right? Talking about Biden and his cognitive decline, the corruption behind the scenes, right? Smile to your face and swindle from below, right? But I'm looking forward to 2 weeks from now. We're talking about transgender in women's sports.
Yeah, that's a hot topic.
I want to cover it. I want people to know right now, some of you are probably up in arms, right? I have friends that are pretty liberal, but I tell you, I'm for the protection of women, and I'm looking forward to covering it. I am not against trans people at all. I support their movement. I don't agree with it. I support the fact that they get to make the choices they want. But there's a line there, and I'm looking forward to covering that in 2 weeks, Jim.
Yeah, there's lines. I mean, one of the arguments I always have, and I'll enjoy getting into this part of it. One of the arguments I always have, not just about trans, but about anybody that's going after equal rights or equal equality, is people aren't equal physically, mentally. I mean, you have to apply equality with a degree, a measure of common sense. And they're not doing it. They're just flat out, everybody's equal. And it doesn't work.
Well, I'm looking forward to that in 2 weeks. I think it'll be an interesting conversation. Yeah. So, we forgot to open up with Happy Father's Day to all the fathers out there.
Yep.
Right? Hope you had a great day. And I guess if you're on the West Coast, you're probably getting ready to sit down to dinner or whatever. We wish you all a happy Father's Day.
Yep. Happy Father's Day. Yep. Good call, Kevin.
Well, I'm Kevin.
And I'm Jim.
And we are
the Signal Brothers.
Thanks, folks, for joining. We appreciate your viewership.
Thank you, everybody.